But for now, it will just be WPS the WPS website. And additionally, unless specified in the book for a particular reason, all numbers will be routed through the main number of 508-799-3115. So if we go down to page 2 of the suggested edits, the only change on this section, we can go square by square, is that all students preschool through grade 6 applying for, registering for, or transferring into the Worcester Public Schools must do so at the Dr. James L. Garvey Parent Information Center located at 778 Main Street, or through the Worcester Public Schools District website. And the change there is simply to acknowledge the addition of the WPS website. I did have one question through administration on this. The word within is not brought over from the prior section, and I was wondering through administration if within should still be included there.
I can make that.
Thank you. So that is right under the preschool grade through grade 6. All students preschool through grade 6 applying for, registering for, or transferring into, it should say transferring into or within the Worcester Public Schools as it did previously. I think it just didn't get carried over onto that side.
Thank you.
And then we look down at grades 7 through 12. Instead of the change here is instead of saying potential English learners, it states if another language other than English is spoken at home, or if the student receives special education services, the registration must be. So that is one section changed there. And then students in grades 7 through 12 who are transferring within the Worcester Public Schools due to a move within the city limits is the adjustment on language there. Do either of my colleagues have any questions on that? Okay, so we will move on. Under home language, the language change is simply a suggestion made to reflect the exact language in DESE regarding home languages. So adjusting it from state and federal regulations to Mass Department of Elementary and Secondary Education regulations. Any questions for my colleagues?
No.
Okay, thank you. All right, so then the opt-out policy, there are no changes. And we scroll down or look down to page 4, we get to Massachusetts school immunization requirements for school year 2023-2024. So that now will adjust on the right-hand side, I believe, to the 24-25 school year with that same header. And it is going to include a statement that vaccines are entered into the MIIS and include a statement regarding emergencies that will state the WPS will provide first aid and emergency care and or contact emergency responders, including 911 in an emergency. Through administration, my question is, where will the statement about vaccines go, and can we spell out MIIS?
Thank you.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. And so will that just be a bullet point under like where it says, you know, under that section?
Yes.
Okay. And then would the emergency statement also be just an additional bullet point?
Yes.
Okay, and then my colleagues, do you have any questions?
Yes,
Okay.
MISS. Why don't we state what that is presently?
Thank you. Dr. Gagne?
It's the.
Can you use the microphone, please?
Yes, it's the Massachusetts immunization system. So I will write that out, and I think the nurses meant to write that in there. Yes. Is that better?
Yes, she said it's the Massachusetts immunization system.
Thank you. And these will both be bullets underneath this section.
Thank you. Member Biancaria?
Do we have a way of notifying how they would include a statement or how they would get that statement?
So the statement is that vaccines are going to be entered into the MIIS system, and it will be spelled out Massachusetts immunization system, and it will be added as a bullet under that section where the similar bullets of lead screening, physical examination, and it will be added in as a bullet there, as well as the statement, the WPS will provide first aid and emergency care and or contact emergency responders, including 911 in an emergency, will also be a bullet.
Okay.
Just to clarify, I just wanted to make sure that we said this out loud. It's the Massachusetts immunization information system. So I will clarify that in here.
Thank you very much. Member Roy, are you okay with this section? Are you good with the section?
Yes,
Thank you. So moving on to page 5 of the document, the section registration policy elementary K through 6 has now been updated to specify students in the Worcester Public Schools shall attend schools based upon neighborhood district lines. They are also eligible to attend 3 citywide magnet schools dependent on space availability. The change from here is it should have, I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Gagnes, it may have been supposed to be that language last year as well, or no, through the administration. Is that the change there? Because it says previously 5 citywide magnet schools, and I think it's 3.
Yes.
So that's the update there. It also adjusts the language in compliance with the Worcester Public Schools de-isolation plan. Through administration, Dr. Gagnes, could you just specify what that change is there?
That change there just reflects we removed that language and we just really talked about language under the voluntary controlled transfer. So we removed that piece at the bottom because that was not applicable for this year.
Thank you. And I believe that, as you mentioned, that much of that language is now under the voluntary controlled transfer policy
Yes.
section. That will be down shortly. Then under secondary grades 7 through 12, the language is essentially the same. I believe the only thing that was different was the attendance at UPCS is based upon students' address, eligibility, and a successful lottery selection. Is that correct through the
Yes,
chair?
that is correct. That's an update just to clarify attendance at UPCS.
Thank you. Member Biancaria, do you have any questions?
Not at this time.
Member Roy?
no,
Okay, so next we have the voluntary control transfer policy. So that title would carry over to the right-hand side as well as the initial subheader, I believe, for conditions for out-of-district transfers. And there is an addition of students who are accepted for voluntary transfer shall only receive transportation to the school if the student receives specialized transportation as related to service under an IEP or a 504. And through administration, Dr. Gagnes, I just wanted to clarify here on here, is that number 4 now the new number 4 and the current number 4 is going down to number 5?
No, that will be stated as number 5. I think it just wouldn't numbered.
No, thank you. No, I didn't know if it was in a particular order for any reason. So to be noted, that is actually going to be number 4, not number 5.
Yes.
And then when a student changes, that is the same paragraph. It's just saying in the current school year as opposed to the out of district school to clarify that language.
Yes.
Member Biancaria, do you have any questions on this?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Member Roy?
no,
Okay. And then as we continue to go down, procedures for applying for a voluntary transfer, the change in language here is adding the WPS website in addition to the Parent Information Center, that parents can now find that form and policy statement on the website, not just necessarily having to go in person. The rest of the language remains the same. And I did have, Dr. Gagnes, as we go down on this, there's no changes under the section for hardship appeals process. The title for policy for non-resident foreign students will carry over. And the language for no high school principal will enroll more than 3 non-resident foreign students until this determination is made and forwarded to the executive director. It's simply a change from it was the managers for instruction and school leadership. It's now executive director. But the question I did have as we continue to go down, the numbering under the school choice section is now listed as 5, 6, and 7. Is that also perhaps a data entry adjustment because of the thing? So if we could just make sure that that reverts to
Yes.
the 1, 2, and 3, and it adjusts the school year from 22-23 to 24-25, and interdistrict school program availability on space. And it takes out the word young to just simply state siblings as a blanket statement. It doesn't have to be a younger sibling, but space for siblings. And the transportation statement stays the same. And then we get into the section, we are adding E and F. So we are adding dual language program and preschool program.
Yes.
And then it's just the numbering again that will be adjusted there. I think that should be number 4 as opposed to number 8.
Yes. Yep.
Thank you. And it does state again, the transportation is not provided. So that's specificity of language around there. And then it has the same information as far as who to contact. And then I believe through administration, the addition of all pre-K to grade 12 schools participate in the program with the following exceptions. Chapter 74 approved programs in the comprehensive high schools and Chapter 4 approved programs in the Worcester Technical High School for all students grades 9 through 12.
Yes.
Member Biancaria, do you have any questions on that section? Member Roy?
No,
Okay, thank you. So now we are going to the student dress code policy, and it is an adjustment of the language of parent/guardian or caregiver to simply caregiver. That is the only change. It is not a change of the policy. It's a verbiage policy from parent, guardian to caregiver. And it does update the part of the policy that had been changed last year or had been adjusted last year to correct it to students are allowed to wear hooded sweatshirts without the hood up.
Yes.
So that's the change there. It's just, it was there. It just was not typed correctly in the book. So then we get down to policy regarding televised broadcasts is now going to become guidance regarding televised broadcasts. And it goes into a bit of a more robust explanation that adds after unannounced times. In addition, there are times when the news media, print or broadcast may be invited into schools to film, photograph, or conduct interviews for news articles. Additionally, WPS staff members may take photographs to share on the district or school social media accounts, websites, or in publications. Photographs of students may not be used if they're, and I actually do have a suggestion here that we change that to caregiver to be consistent, have opted out of allowing their child's images to be used for such purposes. So Member Biancaria, do you have any questions on that? Member Roy?
no,
Member Johnson?
No.
Okay. So then we get down to the Pledge of Allegiance and moment of silence. There is no change on that section. When we come to safety and behavior, internet safety and acceptable use policy, this is where I believe is the only change here, Dr. Ganyas, Member Ganyas, I don't think you want to join us, huh? Dr. Ganyas, that it is,
Just that first statement where it just changes the wording, the value of computer.
okay, thank you, thank
And
you. So
so
it's value of
that's-
technology. So it's literally just
Yes.
takes out the word computer and electronic resources to technology.
Yes.
Okay. All right, and then terms of agreement, no change, internet safety, no change, inappropriate network, no change, unacceptable uses, no change, penalties, no change. And then we get down to electronic messaging guidelines. So now this adjusts to actual technology, I believe that we are currently using. So the Worcester Public Schools contracts with a vendor to provide emergency and informational calls, texts, and emails. The Telephone Consumer Protection Act of 1991, TCPA, and subsequent amendments was created to prevent consumers from receiving robo-marketing calls from telemarketers. By signing the student handbook, you're providing prior express consent for the school district to contact you and your family via phone, email, or text message for emergency and informational purposes. And it gives information on how now they would opt out. And I believe the change there really is that because of the new website coming, we can't do I'm going to say the wrong thing, the actual direct link. We have to use the Worcester Public Schools, the worcesterschools.org link, because it would not link people to the right place at this time.
Correct.
And then it gets into down below that email is not confidential. Teachers will not respond via email to discuss contentious, emotional, or highly confidential issues. These issues are to be handled by phone or personal contact. Emails should be used for general information that is non-vital. For example, do not use email to inform a teacher that your child is not to go home on a bus. A teacher may not read the message in time. A phone call should be made to make sure your message is clearly received. So that is just tightening up that language there, correct, Dr. Ganyas?
Correct. Yes.
Any questions?
no,
Okay, all right, so then we continue to go down. There are no changes until page 14. And this is an update to utilize the word video cameras versus security cameras and also specify where they are used throughout the building and the grounds. And also, I believe this doesn't include the transportation. That might be later on in another section, I believe.
This does include the.
It does, I'm sorry.
Exterior and
Oh.
interior of buses.
Sorry, thank you.
So-
That was the part I was looking
Yes.
for. I apologize. So that adds that, but none of the other language is changing. It's simply that paragraph in pursuit of. The rest of the language will remain correct.
Correct. All of it stays the same. It's just a little bit more detailed to include those suggestions that Mr. Morse put in around the guidepost.
Thank you. Member Biancaria, any questions?
What would be a video camera versus the security cameras? Because we talked about photos and videos in the prior piece. However, now we're changing it from security cameras to video camera. So why wouldn't we be calling them security cameras? Or have security cameras and video cameras there? Because that's not a direction under security cameras in schools, and that's what it's called.
We can add that language in. I think that that wording is interchangeable in terms of talking about security cameras and video.
Okay.
Mr. Allen?
Through the chair, with the inclusion of the school bus, those are video cameras, not really intended to be security cameras per se. So it's just more inclusive of the use of cameras. The school building cameras are security cameras, video cameras, and the ones on school buses are really just video cameras.
Thank you. So if we could change that language to video/security cameras, would that be acceptable, Member Biancaria?
Yes.
All right. And then going down to page 15, we continue, no changes through page 16, page 17, 18, 19. On the bottom of page 19, the removal of the word demerits under other discipline, as I believe it's probably been quite a long time since we've used a demerit system. So now it will simply read detentions may be imposed for infractions of these rules at the school level versus demerits or detentions.
Mhm.
Correct.
Okay. All right, and then we continue to go down to page 24, where we have more changes. And we are actually going to hold on this at this time because this has not been officially voted in. So that is going to be held. And then we continue to have no changes. Sorry, I'm just scrolling more here. We are getting down to page 39. So the bottom of page 39 is now titled Equal Opportunity Affirmative Action, Title IX, ADA, Title I, Section 504, Chapter 622, Grievance Procedure. And it updates the language around these topics. The Worcester Public School District is committed to providing all students with a safe learning environment that is free from bullying, harassment, and discrimination. This commitment is an integral part of our comprehensive efforts to promote learning and to prevent and eliminate all forms of bullying, harassment, discrimination, and other harmful and disruptive behavior that can impede the learning process. And that really tightens up that language because it really gives more umbrella language instead of putting everything out. It captures all types of harassment and forms of bullying. And then it lists out who to contact directly regarding those issues. So it gives you the Title II and I believe it's Title VI, thank you, and Title IX, the 504 and equal opportunity and affirmative action with the appropriate people that will be handling that for the upcoming school year, as well as their phone numbers. Any questions, Member Biancaria?
No, thank.
Member Roy?
No,
And Member Johnson? No, okay. So there are no changes of the sexual harassment policy, but under the definition of sexual harassment, instead of highlighting man, woman, it is simply going to be employee. So that would cover all blanket language there as well. Then sexual harassment is not limited to prohibited contact by an employee toward another employee. And it really, this is just where it adjusts all the language from male, female to employee.
Correct. Yes.
Thank you. And then when we get to page 42, again, it takes out gender specificity to cover people to they. And again, that is what's occurring on page 42. So it is just pronoun adjustment to make it consistent with our contract languages as well. So that was another big thing from this past year.
Correct.
And then we continue to have no change until I believe it is page 47. The title of Education of Homeless Children is now Education of Students Experiencing Homelessness.
Correct.
Okay. Yes, member
Okay.
Biancarria?
Is there a reason why we did change that?
I mean, I think, would it be okay if I answered that? And then if someone else from administration wants to, I believe it's because that's more what is being used as far as terminology now in the education world. Instead of saying homeless children, it's experiencing homelessness because it may be intermittent and not, it's more of the unhoused than the homelessness. But remember, Dr. I keep wanting to make you a member today. Dr. Ganyas, could you clarify that that is correct?
That's absolutely correct. Just updating, just more appropriate language.
Thank you.
And then at the bottom of page 48, it is now, instead of policy on caregivers notification relative to sexuality education, it is sexual health education. And Dr. Ganyas, can you confirm that that is also based on more consistent with DESI language or language used throughout?
Consistent with DESI language and just more appropriate to reference that education that way.
Any questions? Member Biancarria, member Roy, member Johnson?
No,
All right. And then when we get to page 49, it is just changing the title of Office of Curriculum and Professional Learning to Office of Teaching and Learning. We continue to have no changes as we go down. When we get to page 51, it is an update to a website. So it is correcting the website for Student Privacy Policy Office and correcting the zip code. Is that correct, Dr. Ganyas?
Yes, yep, just that
Thank you.
change.
And then when we get down to page 52, I don't know if Dr. Ganyas, if there's anything that you want to share on this. I believe it is actually just putting in correct language, but if there's anything you want to highlight on this.
Yes, our Director of Research and Accountability, Marco Andre, went through this and just updated the language and really wanted to make sure that we shared the most current information. So these are just some changes and updates so that it reflects more accurate information.
Did any of the other members have any questions on this? Member Biancarria? No? All right, okay. All right, and then on page 53, we're adding a header of additional information, so that clarifies it as a header, updating a link, changing the header from regulations to maintenance of student records for more specificity around the student records.
Correct.
And then replacing the language with the legal language according to the Code of Massachusetts regulations.
Correct.
And then on page 54, we're adding in J, which falls under transcript. So minimum administrative records necessary to reflect the student's educational progress. And in addition to all of the data that was previously required, we are now adding in highest performance level achieved on all MCAS tests required for the competency determination.
Correct.
And then the suggestions under temporary record are to change K and L into a new K to add school discipline records, including incident reports involving student suspension or the committing of criminal acts. So that is replacing the current K, is that correct?
Yes.
And I believe maybe what was said there with the K and L was actually changed already over on the left-hand side. So that's why we're not seeing that. So it was previously, I think, a capital K and L, and it's just a formatting change to the
Yes.
lowercase K and L that actually was just inadvertently changed on the left already when people were working on it.
Yes, and I will note
And-
that right now.
Yeah, and then adding in the asterisk, the 2 asterisks for the Ed Reform Act. And Can you just clarify, move this paragraph up to the beginning of the section, see move here, which paragraph was actually moved up? Is it, or is it going to be that the teachers?
That paragraph where it notes for teachers will be moved to the beginning of this section where it says temporary records.
Okay, does anyone have any question on that? So it's moving the final paragraph, that teacher's notes and similar information is going to move to the top under. Can you just clarify under, it's just up and above which exact section? Sorry, Dr. Gagnon, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page here.
I want to teacher notes. We would move it to the start of that section where it says temporary records. So that would move down a space where it says all information, and then we would put that up there.
Okay,
Let me just note that.
and then I just, on the next section where it says new header and reorganize destruction of student records, is that?
That is a new section that's proposed.
Okay,
So there would be that new header below this last paragraph on the left-hand side. And it just really details how student records would be destroyed.
okay,
And that was noted as something that was not listed here. So
okay.
the
So,
recommendation was to add that in.
okay, so it'll be a new header under the last paragraph of during the time a student is enrolled in a school. It will now have a new header underneath it, destruction of student records with that information on the right-hand side.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Any questions? No? Okay. So then access to student records, and it's just a reorganization with some language. Just, it looks like further detailing how students have access to their records and what records we are required to make sure that students have access to. And additionally highlighting the Federal Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act and state and local education laws, as well as federal education laws.
Yes, the goal was so that this section would read clearer
Okay,
and have all of the information necessary, but it was just to make it more clear and have that order that Dr. Andre had recommended here.
excellent. And it does look at all, like it lines up, and then it does note that under B, to authorize school personnel of the school to which a student transfers. So that's additional language there. And the rest remains consistent and just a better organization of the actual information that is already there.
Correct.
Okay. Then under access of other third parties, it now adds in the Code of Massachusetts regulations in addition to the language that is already there. Amending student records. It takes out, I think, some of the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education
Correct.
and specifies the Code of Massachusetts regulations so that it's in line with the current codes. Is that correct, Dr. Gagnon?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions on that? I remember, okay, all right. And Every Student Succeeds Act, so that is the change below on page 59. It is just to update, it's keeping all of that information, but in the paragraph, in addition, that is the change. So in addition, districts are required to provide each individual caregiver information on the child's level of achievement and academic growth of the student, if applicable and available on each of the state academic assessments required under Title I. And then just clarify, it's taking out timely notice. Is that what's happening? Oh, no, it's still there. It's just put in a different way.
Mhm.
Yes, just in a different way.
All right. So districts are also required to provide timely notice that the caregiver's child has been assigned or has been taught for 4 or more consecutive weeks by a teacher who does not meet applicable state certification or licensure requirements at the grade level and subject area in which the teacher has been assigned. Okay,
Yes.
so that just tightens up that language. So it's actually really kind of making that its own distinct section.
Yes, new punctuation, new language edits, but overall, it's exactly the same message.
Okay. And then edit the last paragraph for a child who is identified as an English learner after the school year begins. The child's caregiver must be notified within 2 weeks of being placed in a language instruction educational program.
Yes,
Okay, and that just is language adjustment for our child who has not been identified, and then adjust. It just literally is for a child who is identified. So it's happening when they're happening. Okay.
Correct.
All right. And then the next section, it adjusts to bullying intervention and prevention plan and other school policies in state and federal law. So it talks about not only intervention, but prevention.
Yes, correct. That's the new title of our bullying intervention and prevention plan. So that's just noting that there.
Okay. Thank you. Any, yes, member Biancaria?
So that particular sentence is only to change bullying and harassment. So it actually, okay,
Yes.
thank you.
That is the only change.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying.
But that's the title of it, present, in the
Correct.
future, excuse me.
Correct.
Good.
Thank you. All right, and then we continue to have no change until we get down to page 67. And then this just provides the chart now of resolving school-related problems and gives a flow from going from the child's teacher to the assistant principal to the principal to the coordinate executive directors with the phone numbers for them, as well as the assistant superintendent, the superintendent, and then the school committee.
Correct.
Thank you. Member Biancaria?
Will that be at the bottom of resolving school-related problems procedure, or is it going to the chart on page 58?
There is a chart on page 58. There's a visual, so that will be reflected there in the actual handbook.
So it's on page 67 and 58, or just on 58?
The numbers on here are for, I think, just our backup. The pages will be different when they do their
When we
content,
do the
table of
current,
contents. But I did, to member Biancaриa's question, can you just, I'd like some clarification on this, well, Dr. Gagnes, if possible. Will it be listed in both places, or is that section just being moved somewhere else?
that section will be where it is right now. And because the chart did not translate to this document, we just referenced where the chart is in last year's student handbook.
So that's a carryover from last year's book. It will be in this section, but it will be if in a chart form. So it's this
Correct.
information in a chart form in this paragraph.
Correct.
On page 67?
For the purpose of this document, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Thank
so
you.
the-
Nope, nope.
So the C chart on page 58 is something we would
Yes.
actually cross out, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
that is referencing the current school year's handbook. So it's on page 58 of the current school year handbook.
All right, but this is the change and this will be added to resolving. Okay, so it's all in one place.
Yes.
Is my point.
Nope,
Yes,
that
it
was
is all. in
Thank you.
a good question for sure. All right, and then we have no changes until we get down to the safe haven location for next year's will be at Clark Street, whereas this year it's at North High. So that's just a logistical change. And I believe this is, just to clarify, the track changes are on both sides for this section, but the track change is simply to remove free transportation will be provided when the presence of long-term heavy construction projects on the prescribed routes create a hazard. This applies only for the duration of the project. Could you just explain on this, Dr. Gagnes?
Yes.
Or Mr. Allen, please.
Through the chair, so the current language is actually not current practice.
Is the current practice in the policy manual?
So the current practice would be if whatever changes occur, it makes the student exceed 2 miles or created a safety concern, then transportation will be provided. That's the current practice.
Okay, so that's elsewhere in our policy under transportation that it specifies 2 miles or a safety situation,
So the policy is 2 miles, but we make exceptions for elementary.
elementary. And that is in our, that's in the transportation book. So this is just saying this is incorrect language that's in the policy currently. The free transportation will be provided when the presence of long-term heavy construction projects on the prescribed routes create a hazard. This applies only for the duration of the project. That language is actually not our current practice. Our current practice is that transportation is provided for any student 2 miles or further away from school or at the elementary level during certain safety situations. And that's under the transportation policy in the manual already.
Through the chair, we would interpret that as a safety scenario for elementary purposes
Right.
and
construction
provide
would-
transportation.
yes.
Correct.
Thank you. Any questions?
And
Member Biancaria?
Yes, thank you. Is there a reason why we felt as though that we didn't want to have that information provided? Only because that is, we're fortunate that we have a tremendous amount of construction going on in the city. So I'm a little curious on how one book has it, but another one is not going to.
Through the chair. So we've been consistent that regardless of conditions, that secondary transportation is only provided for 2 miles,
Correct, but
which this would exempt that. This would actually provide transportation to secondary within 2 miles. So we're just applying the regular policy of secondary 2 miles. Well, it's 2 miles for anybody, but we do make exceptions at the elementary level for safety conditions.
Okay, so where is the secondary? I'm sorry. Is it clear in the transportation program in policy that it's 2 miles
To the chair, yes.
in
It's on page 72, I believe.
72?
At least one part of that section is, it gives the 2-mile limit, but
And the elementary piece is also in page 72?
Through the chair. So transportation, the number of buses is determined by the number of secondary riders we have. And so because that provides for more buses than we need for the elementary level, we've been more generous in providing transportation to elementary students. So whenever there's a safety concern, we generally defer and provide transportation to the elementary students.
Correct. I understand that portion of it, but is that written somewhere?
Through the chair, no. The policy is the 2-mile limit.
However, we do make exceptions. So
For the
we're not-
elementary level, correct.
Okay, so we don't have that in the policy book at all.
Through the chair, no.
Make a motion that we do put that in there because there is a lot of construction going on and we do have parents that are concerned with the fact that their students don't have ample sidewalks to walk on or interference as they are walking to school. So I feel as though we should at least have that in our policy book to acknowledge that we are open to the suggestion.
through the, well, I don't have to say through the chair, I am the chair. That would be a practice, not a policy. So it wouldn't go in the policy book because there's actual policy from the state level about the requirements around bus transportation. So I
Mhm.
think it just has to be clear that we know it's a practice of the district, but it isn't a policy because that would be in conflict with what the state policy is for bus transportation. And if we put it in the policy book that it's something that we do, then it could be looked at, we are required to do it.
Okay.
Though I very much so appreciate your point. And I do hope that we continue to make sure that it is known at the school level when those concerns come in that, it is a practice that we do work on here in the district to help with those elementary situations.
And we perhaps can work on making it a policy that it's that way since we're very busy with our city in construction.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and then when we get down to page 75, under who might be eligible under section 504, Dr. Gagne, can you just explain why this section is removed? It's because it's currently in another section above, right above, correct?
It was in the section right above and it was a duplicate.
Duplicate. Okay, so it's removing a duplicate. Member Biancaria?
73 has a section removed also.
Oh, I apologize. I went too fast. All right, so student services, culture and climate department. Dr. Gagne, can you just comment on this removal, please?
Yes, through the chair. We looked at this section and removed this section because there are multiple departments that service our students. And this was just highlighting that one culture and climate department. So we decided to remove this section. All of this information is detailed on the website. And so therefore that section was the suggestion was made to remove that section. If we were to list all of the departments that supported, it would be a very long list.
Do you think that we could just as a recommendation, student services, and can there just be a link to the Worcester Public Schools website so that that way, when this website is updated, it can link to the different student services. So that way it's not, we're not adding 25 more pages, but we're not excluding that there are student services.
Yes.
I'd make a motion to do that. That might be a little bit
I
different.
second that motion. Thank you. Good, very good suggestion. Due to the fact that we have $1.5 million going towards
Yes.
those services.
Yes, I will make sure that those are acknowledged. So I do apologize. So we covered the section 504. Does anyone have any questions on that? That it was a duplicate? No. And then it adjusts on page 76 that it says that the person responsible for section 504 at your school is the principal or the 504 coordinator, which adjusts the language from it just being the principal. And it is noted in the sections above that we referenced already who to contact for 504. I believe it's Tom Tony. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes, Tom Tony with the phone number. That was in a previous section. So that is provided. And then when we get to the following key areas, provide an overview of special education. And Dr. Gagnes, can you just confirm that this is an adjustment to DESE required or DESE consistent language?
Yes, through the chair, this was the updates that Dr. Tammy Murray and her team made to the section to be most up to date and to reflect the appropriate law here.
Any questions? Member Biancaria, Member Roy, Member Johnson? Okay. And then I believe we get down to page 82, promotion policy. The members to consider and discuss the 19 items of the lights retention scale without any numerical rating scores and conference with the student caregivers. Can you just let us know what's different about that? Because I think this might be another section where maybe it had already gotten changed on the other side. I'm not sure, or what is different here.
It's just a very brief edit just to really talk about the conference piece that multiple people that are supporting the student at the school would be consulted.
Okay, so it's just saying it's a more robust conversation around the promotion policy with conferences.
Correct.
Okay. And then I believe if I didn't go over anything, we get down to page 88. And it's regarding standardized testing. And it's saying that we were removing the section on standardized testing because we have an existing web page, and this info is referenced in the ESSA parent rights section of the handbook. So this is because this is already in the handbook currently. Is this correct, Dr. Gagnes?
This is detailed on the web page, and the suggestion was to remove this and that we did not need all of that information here.
All right, so I'm just, if you could elaborate further on why we've removed the section on standardized testing. I understand it's on the website, but if it's something that traditionally has been in the handbook, would there be a beneficial reason for not including that? I guess that's the best way to ask that. I apologize if that's slightly clunky with the wording, but it seems like we'd want people to be aware of this. And if we're showing this typically in the handbook, that it's not in there now, the rationale.
Through the chair, we can, very similar to the section above, we can just add a section, title it standardized testing, and reference to the webpage for families to be able to find that information there.
I think that would be helpful, especially if it's because it adjusts and it's things that are fluid in nature that we highlight the website. Again, that would be fine. And that way we can go from there. Member Johnson?
Yes, to the chair or through the chair to administration. So I understand going with the links. So, but my question is, what about the families that don't go on the links and they just get the paper copy of the handbook? How would they then see all this when, I mean, some families don't always have the electronic handbook handy. So that would be my concern.
Through the chair, yes, point taken, and we can add this information and reference the website as well, so that families have it both ways, both written here.
Perhaps since we are going to hold this for the cell phone policy, if you just want to come back for the next session that we do on this with just maybe an abbreviated standardized testing so that it still provides the pertinent information, but is not maybe as, would that be amenable to the members?
Yeah, I mean, if they could cut it down a bit, but highlight the important stuff and then put the website on there. But I still think this should be in due to
I agree.
families that don't have electric handbooks handy.
I agree. I think it's important. Yeah. All right.
Very.
Thank you.
It is important. I don't agree with having it removed because not everyone has ample access.
Yeah. All right. So I think we're all on the same
I
page.
voice
Remember-
my opinion also that this shouldn't be removed.
All right. Well, we're all in agreement. That's a good thing. So we'll just have something come back to us next time when we do the second session on this. So we have something to review and approve. So I'll just make a note of that to the clerk that that is the other part we will be holding for in addition to the cell phone policy. And then when we get to the high school graduation requirements, this is now language that is standard with state of Massachusetts high school graduation requirements. Correct, Dr. Ganyas?
Correct. It updates the law and
Any questions on this from the other members? No. So then if we look under section 5, exception allowances, it now adds section D, which is students with disabilities whose psychoeducational evaluation provides a specific diagnosis of a learning disability that precludes the student's successful completion of a foreign language course may substitute 2 college preparatory elective courses for the 2 required foreign language courses. So that is also a state adjustment as well, correct, Dr. Ganyas?
through the chair, yes.
Thank you. All right. And then when we look to the dual enrollment section on the bottom of page 93 and the top of page 94, it simply was to add Clark University in as they are part of our dual enrollment offerings. And then when we get to the bottom of page 94, the Massachusetts Seal of Biliteracy, it now updates questions about the MA Seal of Biliteracy program can be directed to the Office of Multilingual Education. So that makes that streamline as opposed to specifying someone that may not be the current liaison or the person in charge of that.
Through the chair, correct.
And then when we,
Excuse
so yep, member being carried?
But that does not remove the MA seal.
Correct.
Correct.
Correct. Thank you for specifying that. Nothing else changes on that page. It's that last section about questions about the MA Seal of Biliteracy. So everything else would stay the same. It's that last section, but thank you for clarifying. That's,
Through the chair, and that QR code also is remaining consistent. So if families want to access the information, they have the QR code, they have the website, and then they have.
Good.
thank you. So then we get down to page 95. The update is around how announcements of no school, a delay in the opening of school or an early dismissal will be shared. And I believe, again, it's adding in the Worcester, www.worcesterschools.org link and which media outlets it will be provided on. And can you clarify, Dr. Ganyas, is it taking out the section about the Spanish broadcast?
Through the chair, that language at the bottom will remain the same.
Okay, so it's just the section above that is adjusting. It's the news sources that are being utilized. So.
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
And then when we get to caregivers and community, starting on the top of page 96, this is adjusting the language to meet state language and to update our policy and website. Dr. Ganyas, could you just clarify with the link at the bottom of that section, is that link going to be accurate based on the new website, or do we need to change that to www.worcesterschools.org?
Through the chair, thank you. We do need to update that.
Okay, so then I ask that we update that to be consistent. And then on LPAC, or English Language Parent Advisory Committee, the only thing that is changing is the contact information for that, correct?
Correct.
And could I ask, Dr. Ganyas, if we could actually put the person's name too, not just their email address,
Yes.
just so it's clear there who it is?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. All right, and then when we get to the section on CPAC, it looks like we are updating the contact information for that. And I know that they had their own website as well before too, and that I'm sure, and I shouldn't say I'm sure, I would believe that probably also fell under the non-ADA compliant. So that's why we need to update to be ADA compliant. And that will be able to go geared right towards the Family and Community Engagement Office for overall help.
Through the chair, yes, that is correct.
Are there any questions for my colleagues on this section? All right, and then under caregiver and family engagement, could you just give us a little overview, if you're able to, about what the difference is here?
Through the chair, the Family and Community Engagement Director, co-directors, wanted to just update this language, just to give a little bit of an overview of their office and the supports that are available. And I think that was one of the reasons why they wanted to remove this section above, because it was kind of repetitive. So they've outlined here what the office is, what they do as support, and gives contact information for that team.
Thank you. And I do appreciate that under the opportunities for caregiver support, it does link into the wraparound coordinators and that Office of Family and Community Engagement. Any questions, Member Biancarria? Member no? Okay. All right. So as we continue to go on page 100, it just was to add the word school to all the schools. So
Correct, through.
thank you. So yeah, I think, and I would just, an overall statement that whatever the full title of the school is, that we use that, that would be great. And then it has a school number. So under Massachusetts parental notice for one-time consent to allow the school district to access Mass Health Medicaid benefits, the section was removed. The only submitting service for us to Mass Health is nursing. Is that correct, Dr. Gagnus?
Through the chair, yes, that is correct. And this is an update that our Director of Nursing made as a suggestion, that we are only submitting Mass Health through nursing.
Okay.
So we do not need this section.
Okay. Any questions on that? All right, and then we are no change to pages 103, 104, 105. And then we get down to page 108, and it is actually looks like it is a much more robust way of encouraging people to please review and discuss the policies within the booklet and to explain what it is about, and that we require all caregivers to do that. And I just think what we do need to make sure is the year is changed for that. I think it still says 23, 24.
Through the chair, I will note that, and we will make that change.
Okay. So unless my colleagues have any questions, the motion would be to accept the changes that we have discussed today and to hold this for an additional meeting for the cell phone policy and the standardized testing verbiage. So
Along with the motions that were made.
yes, yes. So yes, to accept the changes that were discussed in the motions that were made and to hold this for those two specific policies. So when we have the next meeting, we can have the updated link with the changes that were, oh, excuse me, Member Johnson? No, I was just going to say, so we'll have that when we'll schedule a second meeting to go over this and that we can finalize the handbook. So Member Johnson?
Thank you to the chair, to administration. I just have a question. I just always wondered about this. How do we track the school handbook coming back from parents that signed it? How is that tracked? Who keeps track of that? Do we have data on that? To the chair, to the administration.
Through the chair, my understanding is that parents sign and it goes back to the school, and at the school, they keep track of the signed forms.
Okay. I would just,
Member Roy?
Do we know what percentage of parents actually sign and send it back?
Through the chair, I do not know that information. I'm
So
not
what we could,
sure.
since this is just to approve the handbook, what we can do is ask administration to get us that information separately, if that works for you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I would just ask.
Right. Sure, but we can do that. We can ask for that separately and for that information separately. So right now, then I would just ask that the clerk call the roll collectively with the motions made and to hold for the standardized testing and cell phone policy for final approval at our next meeting.
Vice Chair Biancaria,
Yes.
Member Johnson.
Yes.
Member Roy,
Yes.
Chairperson McCullough.
Yes, thank you.